Hey, Nurse Bosses. Welcome back to another episode of the Nurse Boss Shift, where shift happens. Well, if you've heard recently of the Florida nurse scandal, then you know that there were 7,600 plus nurses that paid $15,000 plus to receive a degree from a nursing school in which they did not attend. They then proceeded to sit for the NCLEX, in which 30% of them actually passed without having any formal education. Now, while this scandal is alarming and pretty upsetting to us nurses who actually took the time to do the work and go through school and all the hard hours of studying and stress that it put on us, but it also has deeper implications on the field of nursing altogether. How will we ever be trusted and respected as a profession when things like this keep happening? And it seems like every day there's a new nursing scandal on the TikTok. So tune in for this episode and hear Dr. Jones and I discuss this Florida scandal incident and what we can do about it as nurses to really create the respect in nursing that we all desire. Tune in now. You don't want to miss this episode.
Hey, welcome to the Nurse Boss Shift, where shift happens. Christal, you were missed.
I know. I was so sad to miss that interview.
I know, but you were on to some great things. And before we get into today's topic, tell us about where you were. I kind of gave them a little bit last week, but where were you and why did you miss the podcast?
Well, last week I was getting ready for AM Spa. I went to the AM Spa medical spa show in which I was on a panel of speakers and we spoke about diversity in aesthetics, both for the practitioner, so diversity in hiring a diverse group of people in these med spas, and also diversity in marketing. So better marketing with the products. They send us flyers and brochures with the same type of look of people. So we're just, really advocating for more diversity in testing through these companies, and then also diversity in their marketing efforts, because everyone wants to look and feel beautiful, not just one group of people. So
everyone, regardless of their ethnicity or racial group. It is so true. Yes, and so this is really good to kind of talk a little bit about, because a lot of people are afraid to take a step because they don't know, they want to plan everything out. And so when they're not able to see all the steps involved, or, from A to Z, they're not willing to get from A to B. And so is this something you ever saw yourself doing when you first started your lotion company? Because that's really where your first A was, right?
Yes,
and now this is where you're at some years later. Did you see this as something you'd be doing?
No, not at all. And I always say, when you take the first step in business, your steps, your path kind of is created for you. And also just, as we talk about all the time, just reaching out, not being afraid to talk to people. I went to the conference last year, heard some things that I didn't really particularly agree with. So I went to the owner and just talked to him. And then that led into this opportunity, which will hopefully lead into more speaking opportunities at the conference. So yeah, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and just talk to people. People are really nice. You don't have to be scared. And even, little me last year, I was injecting maybe all of a year, and then now I'm on a stage in front of 2,000 people. So it's just about putting yourself out there and just not being scared. And it's business. So it's like whatever opportunity comes your way, just take it. So as you always have told us, to commit first and figure the rest out later. So that's kind of what I did with this. Still working on doing that 100%, but it's never failed me. So I always have that in the back of my head.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, we just don't know what direction we're going to go. Imagine being held hostage by thinking you have to figure everything out before you take the first move. There are so many variables that you cannot control, and you are planning for that. You are essentially putting the nail in the coffin for your entrepreneurial future, especially because there's so many things beyond your control. And imagine if you had planned out everything with your first business, you would not be on that stage, because you would have been like, oh, I gotta stick to what I'm doing. I gotta stick to stay the course, instead of being open to kind of being guided and led by like what you feel is the right thing, who you're surrounding yourself with, things like that. I feel like that is oftentimes overlooked. The value in that is oftentimes overlooked.
And I find a lot of
Which brings us,
correlation between, when we first started nursing and starting business. I think we forget, like, we didn't know all the answers. We were so clueless when we first started. We're learning out of books, which was much different than real life. So it's like nurses are so scared. I just think all that we've been through in nursing school and our nursing careers, like, how could you be scared to start a business? It's saying you're using money. We took out loans to go to college. There was never any guarantee with that. So people are so scared to step out as if they haven't done it already when going to nursing school.
Well, I think a good segue into our main topic is uncertainty. And when you think you got something planned out, at least the process of becoming a nurse is usually pretty typical.
Yeah.
Here we have the Florida nurses scandal with these nursing schools, and today's topic. Yes. So I was like doing some research on it today, and just like, it's interesting because there's a couple things I feel is happening. First of all, I feel like there's a huge shift going on in nursing, like a huge like reset from everything we've known as nurses. But I also think a lot of our vulnerabilities are being exposed as as a profession, right?
Yeah.
The fact that someone can allegedly avoid all the background that they need, academic background that supposedly prepares us to take this exam. And some people, even though a small percentage of them, there were some people who passed.
Yeah.
What does that say about just the whole scheme of things and everything that we have known as far as our profession that we, hold in such high regard?
Yes. Well, let's back it up for the people who have been under a rock and don't know what has been going on. So in Florida, it has been revealed that, how many nurses was it?
25, but 25 nurses, I believe they said, actually passed the NCLEX. Is that right?
Yeah. So there was a school. There were 3 schools in Florida.
And there was more who went to this. Right.
Yes, who were charging $15,000, $15,000 to $20,000 to give you allegedly to give these nursing. I won't even say students, but people were paying $15,000 to get credentials as if they went to nursing school so that they can sit for the NCLEX. Now, they said 30% of those who sat and took the NCLEX ended up passing. But I don't know if you read, I'm sure you read that the scores at the school were so low. That's what kind of started the investigation into it, because they had horrible scores, clearly, because they were just having people who paid for these degrees go sit for the nursing board. And now we have potential nurses who are employed, working as nurses, who never got any formal education. When I first heard the story, I thought, okay, maybe it was students who went through nursing school and couldn't pass the NCLEX and they were passing them somehow. But to think that someone could skip all the education and training altogether and try to sit for this exam is absolutely mind-blowing to me.
Okay, so there were 25 people charged, not nurses. Okay. Those were the one that was a part of the whole scandal. So those 25 who were charged were in Florida, South Florida, and they charged them with wire fraud scheme. And then there was from the combined schools, there were 7,600 fake diplomas that were given out, and these were associate degree programs. So this is the Operation Nightingale.
So it was
And there
millions of
was some
dollars.
people who passed the NCLEX though.
Yeah.
Like, and so, I haven't been very vocal about this because, first of all, I wanted to save it for the podcast, but
Right.
also I have mixed emotions about it. Like, I'm not, okay, yes, they did wrong. There's no way around that. But it really does shine a light on, and this is about to be an unpopular opinion. One of my biggest issues and this, I'm going to put them on my PhD hat for the context, you guys. I went to a traditional school for my PhD in nursing, which really, really hammered in the value of us being viewed in the sciences as a profession and respected, and how the inconsistencies within our profession and is a huge factor into why we are not respected as other sciences. Also a reason we are not a part of STEM, right?
Okay.
If people don't know what STEM is: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? And so we're not considered a STEM, even though we are science, right? And I just remember, I told this story before, but one of my professors, I will never forget her. And, we were talking about, she's of course PhD already. She was and I wasn't yet. I was in school. And her position was that we will never be respected until we can quantify our position in the profession, like amongst other healthcare or science backed in studies, right? And so if you think about it, there are so many different levels of education that one can take to achieve the same result in nursing. But it's not the same for a doctor. I don't care where they study in the United States. They have to take these prerequisites, which we have that, right? These set prerequisites in most cases. They, give or take speech or something like that. But typically we have our set prerequisites. They have theirs, right? But medical school is 4 years. I don't care how you slice it or dice it. You're going to school for 4 years for medical school. With nursing, it has become so diluted. And I feel like that's why we are fighting so hard for our positioning. And it is a difference if I go to school, am able to go to school for 8 weeks versus going to school for 2 years for my master's degree. That is a huge difference, and it is devaluing our profession. And so when you have that on top of what's happening in Florida, on top of the fact that we are now the villain in a lot of people's eyes, nurses are, the ick thing, like everything is just kind of coming at us, and we need to step back and really own up to where we're at right now, because that does matter. Like, we are trying to, especially as advanced practice nurses, we want to fight for our autonomy and, our positioning in this whole healthcare space. And even as nurses, our position as a part of the team, right? The interdisciplinary team. But if we have all these different levels of nursing, we don't have anything standardized. They would never let that happen for the physicians, not even for the PAs, right? Why is that the case with us? So go ahead. What are your thoughts on it?
That's interesting, because I never thought about that. I never thought about
that.
Yeah, I agree. There are so many levels, and it almost just devalues us, like you said, to a trade, because you can go to these quick routes, and end up with the same results. So I can see that why we are left out, because we're trying to fight for our position, and we are the backbones, but at the same time, it's like we don't have the same level of respect because there are so many different. But then we also talk about how they kind of use the degreed system as far as like, oh, you're an ADN, you're a BSN, you're an MSN prepared nurse, to kind of pit us against each other. So it's like, what what do we do as a profession to fix this problem?
Right. The first thing is we have to own up that we have a lot of work to do. Like we are not, there's no standardization. Like how can we, it is different, right? You think about it, a nurse can come in as an 8, before it used to even be a diploma, right? Diploma. Maybe there are still a few boomers out there who are working who maybe diploma originally were diploma nurses. So it was diploma, then associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's degree, you know, if they're APRN or not, and PhD. But between the diploma all the way up to PhD, even as far as your license, there's no deviation from practice unless you're in an AP, you're an advanced practice registered nurse. Think about that.
Yeah.
There are so many different levels, entryways into nursing. There's not that in a lot of these sciences.
That's true.
Other sciences. An engineer goes to school for the same amount of time. An engineer goes to school. That doesn't change. A doctor, the same thing, that doesn't change. And so that is why when we are, you know, trying to fight for our positioning, they're able to call us out on all of the inconsistencies within our profession. Because it's like, okay, there are some great nurses and nurse practitioners out there. But then we got people, it's like, well, is it that hard to be a nurse? Because even though there's a small percentage, there are some who actually pass the NCLEX.
And that's supposed to be our one standardization of the profession.
And we know that we know it's hard though, right? We know that NCLEX is no joke. We know nursing school is hard. But it speaks to the whole standardization as well. Because you have this test that you take after you finish school. They have the ATI and, you know,
and they were just saying that the indicators. They were just saying that the NCLEX is so hard, they're going to think about redoing it, making it easier. Did you hear about that?
Like, before this hit the fan, they were.
Before this,
and the truth of the matter is, I don't know that a school would have been able to get away with that if it were a program for MDs. I really don't see how they would have been able to get away with it.
Yeah.
And they were able to with us. And so now you have these nurses who are, as of yesterday, I saw online, they were saying that they're not, because now they technically took and passed the test, right?
Yeah.
So where the issue is that they didn't have the education behind, like they didn't go to school, they didn't meet the prereqs, all of that, but they sat and passed the test. And so now they're coming to them and saying, okay, well, you gotta, you know, you have to surrender your license. And they're like, nope, they went and got an attorney. They went and got an attorney to represent them. Wow. And they're saying from their knowledge to their knowledge, it was a reputable program. And here's the thing. Is it up to them to find out if they are accredited and really follow up to make sure they're accredited? Is it up to them to make sure that the criteria that they have set before them is the same that's required from the BRN? Is it their job to do that?
Now, did they actually go through this program? Because from my understanding of reading, they just went and paid. They didn't do, because if you did do it in school, you know that you didn't do it in school.
Yes. And so they're saying, well, hey, I thought this was the way this school did it.
Happens. I thought I just paid $15,000
and who can prove otherwise? Because again, there is not a lot of standardization.
And the fact that you can get 7,600 people to pay $15,000 surely says, like,
I think he said it was $200 million or $100 million. How much was it? I mean, $100 million, $100 million. And it really bothers me because the truth of the matter is, I'm playing devil's advocate, but the truth of the matter is we have worked so hard for, you know, our profession, some harder than others. Yeah. But we have definitely worked hard. And I really hate this for us because we know that this is going to lead to some changes, but it's going to get worse before it gets better for us, in my opinion. Because now we are placed on defense.
Yeah.
This is not something that is just going to go away.
Right.
It really is something that's going to cause the powers that be, all of the major nursing organizations to take a hard look at what we're doing. And I really hate it for us because we are a female dominated profession, right? That's another reason why they don't take us serious.
Yeah.
And a lot of the leaders in these roles that are guiding the profession are women as well. And so we have to think of what is that going to look like for us in the future? We're already broken and battered and bruised from COVID, right? First of all, we were broken, battered, and bruised before COVID, but COVID just amplified it.
Yes.
So what is that going to look like for us?
So do you think that as far as standard that they should just raise it to what? Like all ADN entry, all BSN entry, or what would help us to be?
Here's the problem with nursing. We go along with the wind. We flow with the wind. We flow with the wind. Think about it. As soon as there's a shortage, think about, you see, I've been a nurse for 15 years. Let's see, it was 2015 years. Think about when about 10 years ago. How long you been a nurse, Chris?
I've been a nurse for going on 12 years. And when I started, it was a short, it was oversaturated. So it was like 6-7 months to get a job at the time.
Okay. So when you started, this is a good point. When you started, bachelor's, magnet status hospitals, they wanted bachelor's degrees. If you had your ADN, you had to be within 18 months enrolled in a bachelor's program. And you committed to that. You signed to a contract that you was going to at least get your bachelor's degree. The Institute of Medicine came out with a report to Err is Human, and they found out that patient outcomes based on this research were directly tied to the academic level of nurses. Right. And so all of a sudden, it was like, nope, you need to at least have a bachelor's degree. Yep. If you have an associate's, cool, but get your butt in a bachelor's program within 18 months or we're not going to keep you. That was what was happening when you were hired. When I was hired 15 years ago, it was a free for all. Like in 2007, 2008, the market was the bubble was about to burst, but it had not yet. So it was like all the frenzy about nursing. The average nurse was 55 years old and they're going to leave and retire and we need all these nurses. So I had a job. I graduated in June. I had a job probably in March. And then I didn't even start. I delayed them until I believe September. So I had a secure job, took some time off, took some time with my NCLEX, hadn't even taken it yet. It was great, right? By the time you came, that's when they were like, oh yeah, at least a bachelor's degree. That lasted for a certain amount of time. Yeah. What's happening now? Are they really tripping about the bachelor's degree anymore? No. They're not clearly not even tripping about any degree at all. Because how are people able to bypass it? So I don't know if it's the associate degree level or not, but I mean, we have to look at the comparison when it comes to these other sciences. And what are they providing? Like, how are they able to have the consistency and keep it standardized? And why are we not? Even when times get hard. Even when there is a shortage, allegedly a shortage, we still have to be consistent because our profession relies on, like, we're never going to be taken serious. And when I say taken serious, I want people to understand that what that looks like for us. That looks like we don't have a seat at the table. That looks like there is no advancement. Like, we're going to be continue to be stuck in a skill-based position. Where and that's not where we're trying to go. That's not the trajectory we are trying to go in. But until we get some kind of consistency and like really say like as a nurse, all these other like if you think about it, even for like say CRNAs, now they're moving to the DNP, right? It's no longer just like you can get a master's degree. They want you to have a DNP. A lot of these other advanced practice nursing specialties want DNPs, right? They're trying to elevate us, but something's happening here in the part of nursing where we are at the bedside. And that is what I believe is being manipulated by a lot of these healthcare organizations for their convenience. It's not for the betterment of us.
Right. So I'm thinking that you're absolutely right. When times get hard, and it's almost too how they treat us on the unit. I was just thinking about that when you were talking, how 1 minute is like a frenzy to make all these changes, and then the next minute they don't care, and then like water at the nurses stations, like they care and then they don't care. So I absolutely agree that standardization definitely needs to happen in order to elevate our career, because I never thought that about the different entry rates, but that makes so much sense when you say that other sciences, there's one standard and one standard only. And I think that would be best for our profession. I mean, I do like the fact that nurses can enter in at an ADN level because of the monetary aspect of it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's like, what means more to us, getting everybody in or having our profession upheld to the standard in which we fight so hard for it to be? That's a tough one. Well,
first, and the thing is, we have to be honest. Nurses were not, the whole profession itself was not created for us to be anything beyond caregivers.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
Historically.
There's
right?
That part.
And so that's why we have so many different levels. Doctors come in as doctors.
Right.
Held in a high regard. Doctors. Yeah. Nurses come in as nurses, and now over the years we have fought so hard to get respect, to obtain more independence and autonomy within our profession, right? It's taken years and years and years. And so that is why we have so many entry points, because, and that is why when you're in even a baccalaureate program, entry level, you get your training at the bedside. It's to go to the bedside. And so that's why it's so difficult for us now, and why we feel like we're kind of scratching and clawing, because essentially this is where they want us at. And so I feel like there's a shift happening, but what the outcome is going to be based on us. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but I will say,
okay, let's note it here.
This is our podcast.
Right.
But I will say, and this may sound crazy, right? And for the listeners, you guys, we would love for you to comment and your opinion on this. But do you guys think it's a coincidence that we got all of this money during COVID for travel, right? Nurses have been making even more than medical doctors in some cases. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars in 1 year, right? Just really get into the bag. And then now, the pandemic starts slowing down. Now we're still demanding more. And I feel like it's intentional. Like, I feel like we are being set up. Like, because of, it's kind of like, we were supposed to stay in our place.
Right.
And the fact that we are trying to have a voice, we are trying to mobilize on a national level. We are demanding staffing ratios in states that they were okay with whatever they dished out to them. They are demanding livable wages locally, meaning in the U.S., but abroad in other countries. I don't think it's a coincidence. And I understand that people think like, this is the thing about social media. Everybody is so surface level, and I'm deeper than that. I'm always thinking like, while everybody is looking over here, what's going on to the right? While everybody's looking to the right, for the listeners, what's going on to the left? Because that's really where the action is happening. So y'all focus on all the things that really don't matter, so much so that after it's, the smoke is cleared, y'all like, all right, that part is over. What's next?
Yeah.
They done already robbed you of your dignity. They done already set you up, right? And we
Yeah.
don't even see it because we've been so focused on what's going on to the right, which is what it is.
Right.
And I don't think it's a coincidence, Chris. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that there is about to be a lot that's about to happen in the landscape of nursing. And if we do not find a way to come together and unify to be prepared for this, we are going to find ourselves on the you know what end of the stick in all of this. I do.
And why
Think
do
about
we
it. Nurses are
not?
getting more autonomy.
Yeah.
Nurse practitioners getting more autonomy in all the states, full practice authority. And then we have this, like, we're fighting for our position. We're showing, the research has shown that we are able to help with these vulnerable populations, improve the health of communities and all of the value. And then we have this. It's like, oh, well, are you a Florida nurse now? It's
right. Why are we so scared to just walk out and to just hold strong on what we believe? Is it because we're all disjointed and some of us are with the cause and other of us don't really care? Why are we so scared to stand up and, because they try to get us and try to really play on our heartstrings because we are female dominated of our patients need us. And if we don't do it, no one else will. It almost reminds me, being that I do veteran disability work, is, a lot of their motto is, if I won't do it, then who will? So that's why they're hurt, bruised, battered, and they just keep going and they just keep going. And it's almost the same with nursing. It's like, we're bruised and battered, but yet we keep going because they keep playing on our heartstrings that our patients need us, in which they do. But then at what cause? How long do we keep putting up with that before we stand up for ourselves and get the due diligence that we deserve?
I truly think it's generational. You got the baby boomers, you see them all over TikTok, like, I had 50 patients, all of them vented, total care patients. You got them.
We revel in that.
And then you got the generation X, who is like, yeah, I balance it. I work, but I'm looking for a little bit more. I like the bedside, but those are the ones that may have worked their way up to like directors and, charge nurses and things like that. Then you got the millennials. They're balancing, like, okay, we're working, but like, I need work-life balance. I don't care what you're talking about. I'm not about to kill myself. And then you got these Gen Zs, which is all over TikTok, a day in the life, a day in the life, a day in the life. So we all are at different points. I really love the Gen Zs. I ain't gonna lie, because they go get say it again.
I said, because they're not going to put up with it for too long.
So they are essentially redefining what nursing looks like. And social media is just helped kind of shine a bright light on it. But I don't know, because if we could ever come together on it, Chris, because of our differences, generational differences. I feel like I'm like right in the middle. Like I'm like a Gen X plus a millennial too. So like, I get, my mom is a boomer, so I have some of her principles within me, but then also I am also like, I'm not about to work myself to death for y'all. It's not happening. I'll do it for myself before I do it for another company, And so I don't know that we'll be able, because of this. First of all, I don't know if we all collectively agree that this is something that could lead to something really bad for us as a whole. I don't think people are even giving it. It's treated like another viral moment.
Right.
It really is. Yeah. But the people who are in the positions of power are not the Gen Zs as it pertains to our profession.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not Generation Z. So Generation Z can scream and shout and say what they're not going to deal with and decide to leave the profession, and they're going to be an influencer. But it's still the boomers and the Generation X's that are in those positions to shape our profession as a whole.
And I think some too are still so blinded by the money that they throw at us. And that's another thing you were saying, back to how they were given all this money during COVID. There are still those who work all those shifts and they just, they're driven by the money. So, as long as the checks keep coming, then they could care less what the profession does or doesn't. They're just excited to be a part of a profession where they can hustle and make money. But, for the rest of us who truly care about what this profession is, because it does feel like we were heroes, but now we're slowly, with all these like viral moments happening, it's like the profession is slowly getting diluted and it's becoming something ugly that a lot of us don't like.
It is so true. And honestly, as ugly as this is, it too is just adding fuel to the fire of what we already know is kind of happening in the space and in our profession. And so I feel like there's going to be a lot of change that's going to come in the next so many years. States are definitely looking at, like, the board. When I say states, I mean like the BRNs of the states are definitely looking at how they can mitigate this type of stuff in the future.
Yeah.
And they really, I don't know what it's gonna lead for us to be honest. It really is unpredictable. But the bottom line is, I just by mere fact that they're not going after these nurses as hard as they should. If that was a doctor, they'd be in jail for assault for every patient they touched. For nursing, it's just like, oh, it's nursing care. Like, they're nurses. They didn't, they didn't cut a patient. But like, even if they started an IV, like, and you were unqualified, that's assault. Like, they should be held accountable. I agree that they should be held accountable, because if not, who's to say it won't happen again?
Yeah, that's medication they're putting into their bodies that they truly have no clue what it could do or what it is. So I absolutely agree that they should be punished. Did they fire them at least? Were they able to find out?
No, actually they were still working, because technically they are licensed. Like what's happening in Georgia, where they're telling them they have to give up their license, and they're like, no, like, I worked for this license. I took a test. The test said that I am a nurse.
Yeah.
The hospital that hired them based on their license.
Yeah.
And imagine in a time where there's a shortage.
Yeah.
Anybody with a pulse and a license can get hired as a nurse for the most part when it's like this, because everybody wants to travel. I don't know, Chris. I don't know.
Scary.
This is just one of those times where I definitely know we're going to have to find a way to really come together and be honest about some of the things that need to change in our profession, and really work diligently to make that happen. Because I don't care, if you are what your level is of nursing. If at any point you decide to leverage your license and be able to become an entrepreneur, if you're trying to do that with your license, you don't want to be questioned or to feel like, or to be treated as if they're suspicious of you. We don't want that for ourselves. We gotta stand strong on the fact that unequivocally we all are qualified. We have to have that. We have to unanimously agree on that. And I don't know what that looks like, but we definitely have to.
I agree. I don't
know
what
it looks like. This has been a sombering podcast today, I feel like.
But we have to talk about it. It's a nursing hot topic, so we had to talk about it and at least bring awareness. That's been my word for the last week. Bring awareness to these topics, so that people can start thinking about ways that they can change the profession, make it better, and what we can all do to advocate for a standardized way to have our profession being treated with dignity
Mhm.
and to
Yeah.
stop scandals like this. This is absolutely horrible to think that somebody could be brave enough, have the enough, I want to say, the balls um to act like a nurse and to sit for this test and to
Yeah.
treat patients. That's the thing that's so scary. We hear about those people who go to hospitals and fake like they're a nurse. It's a one-off quote unquote crazy person who might do that. But to think that
Mhm.
7,600
Mhm.
people were willing to pay $15,000 plus to even have that money, first of all, that's what a lot of people were saying. To even have $15,000 to pay towards a fake nursing degree, thinking that they can even pass the test. Um, wow. That's
Yeah.
all I can say about
Yeah.
that.
It is absolutely astonishing, and I think it just shines, like I said, it just shines a bright light on we got to do better.
Yes.
And even just the inconsistencies across the state, the fact that the schools knew to send them to certain states where they could most likely practice, like there
Mm-hmm.
is too much differentiating factors statewide. Like,
Right.
no, there it needs to be consistent,
Yeah.
and that's why they're finding these loopholes
Mm-hmm. That's
in these
true.
states. So yes, you guys. So again, listen, we were talking about the Florida nurse scandal. Chris and I felt that it was important for us to come on and give our perspective on it. And honestly, we haven't talked about it until
Mm-hmm.
today,
Yeah.
as far as our views on it. And I feel like there's going to be more that's going to come out in the news. And, if that happens, of course, we are going to talk more about it. You guys know,
Yes.
normally we talk all things nurse boss.
Yeah.
But this could affect nurse bosses potentially because
Sure.
we are leveraging in most cases our nursing license, which some
Right.
people got illegally, and that is not okay.
Right.
Changes the game for us. So we just wanted to give our input on that and kind of shed some light on that. If you guys have a fellow nurse, which I know you do,
Yes.
bestie, nurse boss, someone in your network who could receive a lot of value from the Nurse Boss Shift, feel free to provide our link or tell them to subscribe or discuss what today's topic were. That would be great.
Yes.
So on that note, Chris, any last words before we head out?
Nope. That is all. That is all for now.
All
Until
right,
next
ladies
time.
and All right, ladies and gentlemen, this Nurse Boss Shift was sponsored by True Savvy. That is
Yes.
Chris and my IV hydration training mentorship program where we help nurses and nurse practitioners start their own IV hydration businesses in 60 days flat. All right, you guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.